Hey guys, and welcome to the next episode of Off the Cuff. I think we are on episode 11, 10 or 11. But again, in true off the cuff nature, we try to make it as informal as possible. So today, because it's Halloween, we have a special one for you. We are going to be chatting about some client horror stories, and just how you can avoid them. Avoid them as a customer. Kind of give you guys some insight about what guys like me deal with on a daily basis, and then, or at least not on a daily basis, but often enough that it's definitely it's customer service. It's a concern. And just how you like I said, how you guys can avoid that as consumers. So I was thinking long and hard about how to kind of start this episode. If I should just go straight into it, or kind of give you some little bit of an interlude. First, I'm gonna show off my tag Monaco that I'm wearing. That matches the rest of my outfit here. Beautiful piece, Steve McQueen. If you guys know anything about Steve McQueen and just Monaco in general, the square watches is not something that I'm very accustomed to, but there is an ass for every seat, if they say. And I think it's definitely something really unique that you can kind of change to if you're looking for something a little different from the rest of your friends. But regardless, back to what I was saying, I think is in every sales business, you always have, or any business in general, you always have those people that are difficult to work with. More so in sales, I think something that a lot of people don't talk about is their failures. The reason why I got onto this podcast and the reason why I wanted to start chatting about it, in this format is because I think a lot of the successful watch doers that you see on YouTube, they very rarely talk about, the times they fucked up. I mean, for lack of better, explanation. And I think that, it's important because nobody is infallible. Everybody's, makes mistakes and everybody has flaws. And, there are certain situations that you get involved with and you get involved in. And a lot of times it could be the customer. A lot of times it could be you. So, something my mother always said is, it doesn't matter how right you are. If you handle the situation incorrectly, you're incorrect. And I think that comes and kind of shines through with a lot of situations. If you have a client that is a little irate, it's important to put yourself in their shoes and handle the situation the way that you would like to be treated. I think that in a lot of situations, animosity can be avoided if you treat everybody with that level of respect. So, a little bit about, certain situations that we've been involved with. Recently, we had a situation where a client of ours, very good client, well-respected client, he received the watch and it wasn't really in the condition that he described now, or that he had hoped. Now, we try our best here at Taylor Timepieces to describe everything to the best of our ability. But we do have two offices, one of which is in Austin, Texas, that Eric runs, and one of which is in New York, right here in New York City. So, a lot of times one of us doesn't see the piece as clearly. Other times, just the customer has different expectations, and it's your job as a salesman to set the expectations of the client. But every once in a while there's a disconnect. Every once in a while you do fall short. So anyway, this gentleman was on eBay, a platform that we use, obviously quite frequently to sell our products. And eBay, bless their hearts, has recently introduced the authenticity guarantee program. Now, a lot of you guys might know what that is. A lot of you guys might not. So to go into a little bit of detail, basically, so instead of shipping the product directly to the client, you ship it directly to an eBay authenticity partner. Now, they are not employed by eBay. They're contracted out. That's a misunderstanding a lot of people have. Because I see these dealers all the time that are like, oh, eBay, said something was wrong with my watch. And, it's not. It's totally fine. But it's important to know that these gentlemen are contracted out as to avoid any bias, in authenticating and inspecting your piece. So, and of course, the benefit of that to the client is they know they're getting an authentic piece. Benefit of that supposedly to the seller is when the piece gets authenticated, a lot of return requests automatically become null and void because those eBay partners have seen the watch. So if they receive the watch and it's in pristine condition and it's authentic, when they ship it out to the client, if the client says, hey, this isn't, very clean, it's missing links, it's missing this, it's missing that, the eBay partner would step in and say, that's not the case. We've seen the watch in person, so we've determined, the condition of the piece and everything that it comes with. Everything it said it would come with is what is in fact included. So anything to the contrary is a disingenuous statement. But a lot of times what happens is you get things that are sent out through eBay and, perhaps we have a disagreement on condition and the eBay guys reach out to me or they reach out to the client. Now, I always love when they reach out to me before reaching out to the client, because sometimes when they reach out to the client, they make things a much more difficult situation, than expected. I mean, you think of situations where, you're a client, you're buying an item, and eBay or the platform that you trust reaches out to you and says, hey, this item is not as described. So, of course, not seeing the item in hand, not having it in hand, first, you're always a little concerned. So, again, sometimes the authenticity guarantee program does create some unnecessary problems, but in this situation, it was definitely a challenge, but we worked it out. So basically, the gentleman had received a call from eBay that said, this is the findings that we found. The item that you purchased was not in the condition described. So, of course, he was calling. He was upset. He was worried about the condition of the item, and he wants to wear this item on a daily basis. How's it gonna look on his wrist if it's a little bit more scratched? So they had explained that the item was more scratched. We had stated it as used, but in like new condition, because it was a more recent warranty card year, and they had described that was not the case. So, we're going back and forth, and this guy understandably is worried about this item, and I said, hey, do me a favor and receive the item. Receive the item. If you're unhappy with it, we're happy to cover a polish. We're happy to, process the return if a return is needed. But, we find that a lot of these situations, EP tends to over-exaggerate the wear of the item because they want to protect themselves. So, of course, he said, okay, I'll take your word for it. We did have to, send documentation over basically saying that if there were any problems, we would handle it because at that point it would be out of the jurisdiction of the platform. And then, a lot of shitty dealers could just say, oh, I never said I would help you, and blow him off. So we received the watch over the weekend, this past weekend, and he basically reached out to me and said, you know what, you were right. This is in the condition that I expected it to be in. We need no further, help from you to basically solve this issue. And I think that it was definitely started out as a scary situation because you were thinking, wow, eBay does this thing where it's supposed to be helpful and it creates a bigger problem. Also, they tend to pay you out before they have an issue. So, a company like ourselves is dealing with about, $1 million of watches. If you receive a payout for an item, and that money is in your account and you go and you spend it on inventory, you spend it however you need to spend it, and then a couple of days later, maybe a week or 2 weeks later, they say, we're gonna have to recall this purchase because or this payment because the client processed the return. It becomes an issue with cash flow and basically how you run the business. But I just look back to how we handled that situation and how, immediately, we were just able to help. And I mean, I know this isn't really a client's horror story just yet. We'll get into that and a couple more examples. But, I find that a lot of these situations can be avoided if you jump on the grenade before the grenade explodes. If you would have reached out to the client and said, the client would have reached out to you and said, the watch comes as is, sorry, can't help you, and then, removed his number and stopped answering his calls, that would have been a much worse situation. Alternatively, I've had such other situations where clients are not as amenable to a resolution. Another situation of which, and this is going into that horror story that I did mention, where the gentleman needed his watch shipped to him by the weekend, and for no particular reason, he just wanted it by the weekend. And I was in a couple meetings when he had made the purchase order. It was a Friday afternoon, around 4:00, and he made the purchase order. You process the purchase, and then you have to ship out the item. But if the purchase order comes in at 4:00 and the shipment or the post office closes at 5, usually 5-6 o'clock in most major cities. You have basically an hour or two to, basically receive that purchase order, get it processed by the credit card company or whatever processing service that you use, and then get out the item. So we were on a time crunch. I mean, so this gentleman, of course, said, I need this watch by the weekend. Now, the only way we'd get it there is if we did a Saturday delivery. But, so we had no problem paying for the extra expense. But basically, as the story goes, he was giving us a hard time, reaching out to us every day, every hour of the hour, making sure that the item was shipped during the certain time because you needed it by a certain time. I said, hey, do you have a special event? No, I just want it for the weekend. And what we ended up doing was I was basically my local FedEx post office was closed, and we shipped everything. If you worked with us before, we ship everything FedEx overnight or 2 day, depending on the cost of the item and how cost effective it is to ship the item. My local FedEx was closed, so we went to one the next town over, the next city over. That was about an hour and a half ride. So I went in and I dropped off the item, and I left the item with the FedEx person, and the FedEx person said they take care of it. Now I go back home, and this gentleman is irate on the phone, calls me on Messenger many times, and basically says, hey, I don't want this item anymore, because you weren't able to hit the deadline. Now I checked the website, and of course, I saw that, basically we had hit the deadline, but by the time they processed the package, it was too late, because obviously they have to scan the package and process the package and inspect the package, all whatever FedEx does. Shout out to Debbie and all them over at IFS that helped us out, and their shipping company. But regardless, this gentleman was just irate, calling me names, and that's something that is difficult in the sales business. I mean, he was, you're a failure. You don't know how to get your shit together. You don't know how to get your items out. And, I find that, in certain situations like this, I think you have to fire the client, and it's funny because a lot of people, when they talk about business, they talk about firing an employee. And, if the employee is not doing their job, you get rid of them. And a lot of times, nobody really ever talks about firing that client that you have, and basically just saying, hey man, I wish you the best of luck. It seems that, we're not able to service you. Because at the end of the day, it is sales, and things do get crazy. But, I think in the long run, you need to protect your peace and protect your mental health. And if someone is berating you, and you're making every possible attempt to remedy the situation, or converse with them in a respectful and kind manner, get rid of them. It's like the cancer to the business, where you look at it and you say, hey, this isn't going to work, sorry. And you have to fire that client and just tell them, hey, you can't work with them anymore. And then you also have the extra, extra bump, or the extra issue of having clients that are routinely changing their minds. And the gentleman came back to me and said, you know what, I think it's a good deal. Let's do the deal. And, a lot of other salespeople would be tempted to be like, you know what? Yeah, I do want to close this deal, and then I'll never work with them again. And I think that sets a precedent, to allow your clients to mistreat you. If you're in a romantic relationship or a friendship, and someone mistreats you and doesn't do, doesn't do what they say they're going to do, or perhaps starts to berate you in a fight, and you say, I'm not going to handle this anymore, and they come back to you with flowers or hugs or kind words, it's no different. And so I think as salespeople, you have to be very firm on that and just say, listen, we said we won't work together anymore. And moving forward, I think that it's best if we look elsewhere. And I think everyone gets one. Everyone has a bad day. They woke up on the wrong side of the bed. So everyone gets one issue where maybe they make a mistake, and they've been difficult. They've had a tough day. But 2, 3, 4, 5 times, I think at a certain point you have to move on from the client. And in sales, it's tough because, when I started in 2019, you say to yourself, I don't know where the next paycheck is going to come from. I don't know how, if I lose this client, how much income have they given me? How much, how much opportunity, how many clients have they referred to me? And I think at the end of the day, you have to practice the law of abundance. If you know your product, if you have a good product, if you're a good person who is educated and is trying their best to give the customer the best experience possible, there will be other clients. I've had situations where clients will change their minds, many, many times. And a lot of people will say, what's the big deal? They change their mind. And while it happens in sales all the time, the issue that we have is if you change your mind after the sale. So, perhaps they buy a watch and they wear it for a couple days and then they say, oh, I don't want the watch anymore. And you say, okay, my restock fee, usually our restock fee is anywhere from 10 to 20%, depending on the item, based on how the market's going. So, if you have had the watch for 6 months and it's an AP and the AP market is going down, or that particular watch is no longer hot, a lot of watches have periods where, when they first come out, example, the Tudor Black Bay Harrods, when they first came out, they were the hottest item. Now they kind of cooled down a little bit. Still a beautiful watch for anyone who's looking for that piece. But, they aren't the next hot item. And so, we have restock fees, and this guy, he was local to me, and, we ended up having to fire him as well. What he would do is he would buy watches, he would polish them, and anybody who knows me knows that we have a very capable and incredible team here that does polish, both on site and basically outsourcing out to other places. Like we have a gentleman in Texas, we have a gentleman here in New York. When we can't basically do the work that needs to be done, we outsource to those people. But this one gentleman, this one client, had decided to go to his own guy. And this guy had done such a poor job. So, the watch was just polished to crap. Over polished. The finishing was incorrect on the item. And he wore it for 2 weeks, got it polished on his own dime, which we were totally okay with because it was a vintage piece. And then said, you know what, I want to return, I want my money back. And it was just such a battle to tell this gentleman no. He was calling me up, then he would call me up and say, hey Nick, I want the watch. And I would deliver the watch to him, and then he would service the item or polish the item, in most cases incorrectly, and then he would say, you know what, I don't want this watch anymore. And then he would call me 3 days later and say, I really missed that watch. It was in my price range. It was a beautiful piece. All my friends are giving me compliments. I want it back. And he would expect to buy the item back and sell the item back at the same price at every time. And, as we said, we do have a 10% restocking fee just because at the end of the day, nobody works for free. If we're going to go through the process of shipping, inspecting, and everything, we need that restocking fee to cover our costs and, the issue of market changes and basically, the condition reports, because if you wear something daily every day for 2 weeks, it's not brand new anymore. And now it's more worn, or perhaps it was mint and now he's wearing it every day and now it's not so mint. So we have to enforce those rules, and it's never something I like to do, but for business purposes, we have to run a business. So just going back and forth with this guy, and it went on for 2-3 weeks. He would give me deposits and basically then request the deposits back, even though our deposits are non-refundable, and back and forth, and make threats and basically say that he was going to tell all his clients or all his friends to not shop with us because we wouldn't get back the non-refundable deposits that we charge. And he was, oh my gosh, he was terrible. I mean, I wish Eric was on the line with us right now, and he would confirm how difficult this gentleman was. But again, we did have to fire them, and I can't stress this enough. When you make a decision in business, you have to stick to it. It might be uncomfortable. It might be unfortunate because you developed a friendship with the client. But, if you guys cannot come to terms within a reasonable amount of time, hey man, I'm sorry, I wish you the best of luck. Man, woman, child, however you identify, however they identify in 2022, I can't work with you. I can't service you. And I think the trick to that, and the trick to doing that without a lot of pushback, is to just make it your responsibility by saying, I cannot service you to the best of my ability. I cannot meet your needs. You never want to say, hey man, I think you're crazy. I think that you're expecting too much. I think your expectations are way too high. So buzz off. Obviously might be what you're thinking. You're totally free to think that. I've thought that many times about several difficult clients. But at the end of the day, you have to be as formal and cordial as possible. So, I just think, we talked about these client horror stories, a lot of which could be avoided. And I'm grateful that as we've grown as a business, I've grown as a person and learned how to deal with these issues in a more professional manner. I mean, many people who know me in my personal life know that I tend to have a shorter fuse, and I tend to get stressed a lot easier. Now, that's always a difficult affliction if you're in sales, but I think you have to manage it. You have no choice, because if you want to be an effective salesperson, you have to, basically learn how to put your foot down. And for me, it's literally my foot down. As a joke, that's a disability joke for any of you guys that have been watching our other podcast here. But I think the trick is to, when I first started, I was so nervous to be rude to these clients and be difficult. But you quickly learn that there's a difference between running things with an iron fist and running things with a firm hand. And I think that, when you deal with those difficult clients, you have to be polite, but you have to be firm. No, you cannot talk to me this way. No, you do not get special treatment that I don't afford to all of my other clients. Clients that'll say, oh, I don't need to give you a deposit. Clients that say, hey, I can return things all the time. And, the restock fee, because we're boys, and my response to them is, listen, I've run a business. If we really are friends, boys, whatever, associates, you have respect for me and my company and, my associates, then you're not trying to nickel and dime. And that is something that I have believed firmly. That is something that I always have difficulty expressing, always have difficulty manifesting. But I think at the end of the day, the client that respects you has no problem giving you a deposit. Client that respects you knows that if he's changing his mind every week, after every week, that restocking fee is important, because it's something that you need to do to justify the cost of restocking this item. And The client who doesn't respect you calls you every day. I mean, you know, in my personal life, I am very driven. I am very motivated. As we sit, I'm recording this at 5 in the morning. And it was the only time that, I found today that I was able to record it, but I wanted to get it out for you guys. So I'm a bit of a workhorse. And part of that is, always being available to the clients. And what I have had to learn and what I'm continuously learning is there's a time and place. Clients cannot call you at midnight. Clients cannot call you at 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. Perhaps if there's a time difference, you can explain to them that, hey, we're in New York, so if you're in California, don't be calling me at 9 o'clock California time because I'll be asleep or I'll be working on something else. But you have a lot of clients that don't respect that, and I think that how to deal with these horror stories is to just be firm and be generous, but not too generous with your time. And I think that in the long run, you'll build a more effective and more manageable business that'll prevent you from losing your mind as you grow it. I mean, again, that's something that I am continuously working on and continuously trying to build and grow because it's a part of my personality that I have always struggled with. But, if I can leave you guys with anything here today, I think it's that, what I said earlier is, it's the difference between an iron fist and a firm hand is definitely manageable, and it's definitely measurable. And, I think if you're going to start any business, you have to be firm to prevent some of these fallouts and some of these issues that you have with clients. And yeah, I thank you so much for joining us this week, and you'll be seeing other content. Again, I apologize, I was a little sick last week, so Wednesday and Friday of last week was not possible, but we are back to